morning, everyone. I hope everyone is having a decent morning, or at the very least slept very well and got into work and whatever they're doing for the day. Hope you've been able to pursue your morning great and without too much difficulty. So, I need to leave, so I can't do this. I can't be here for too long on this one, but I thought this was funny to me, and because I thought it was funny, there's a certain indignity about it that I wanted to talk about. Rachel Maddow, for the last 2 years, have been screaming to high heaven that anybody would listen that Russia and Trump were somehow working together in this incestuous bond, and that Donald Trump is essentially a puppet of Vladimir Putin. Everything was cut through the lens that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia. Now, yes, from a political standpoint, she's completely motivated and incentivized to take this particular position, but it's hard to know whether she's a true believer or whether this was done purely for political gamesmanship. I mean, after all, they're on MSNBC. That is essentially a platform of the Democratic talking points, so Democratic thought. But either way, she wasn't alone. Meaning the entire media establishment, for the most part, went along with this idea that Donald Trump in some way was colluding with Russia and Vladimir Putin. And again, everything was cut through that lens. If Donald Trump didn't pass sanctions, they didn't look at this notion that maybe he doesn't want to pass sanctions because pass sanctions assumes for the moment that you got into office not by your own hand, but you got into office by the hand of somebody else. No president is going to pass sanctions like that, attesting to that particular point. Particularly somebody like Trump, who bristles at the thought that he might have gotten in, not by his own steam, but with the help of a foreign power. They didn't look at it from that context. The only context they looked at it is, he's not doing this because he's trying to be friends with Vladimir Putin. He's a Putin puppet. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Nerf bombs. When Cenk Uygur made this argument that there were Nerf bombs, essentially that we were bombing Syria and that the Syrian government, that this somehow wasn't a big deal. That, like the idea that if any country bombed us, that we would just kind of wave that off as no big deal. Again, all of it cut through the lens of Trump and Russia. The idea that we were not arming Nazis in the Ukraine, they were killing Russians, didn't apply at all. In fact, pulling out of missile treaties, again, didn't apply at all. All of these things were cut through that context. Rachel Maddow even did this show when there was a cold snap and there were temperatures like 40 below zero, making this argument that somehow the cold air, that the Russians and the Chinese could attack our power grids, and that attack on the power grids, if that took place when it was 40 below zero, people will freeze to death. This is the stuff that this woman was peddling. I used to love this show, but this show essentially became a talking point of the Democratic Party that Trump and somehow was working with the Russians in order to win the election, as opposed to attributing the blame where it belongs on Hillary Clinton for losing the election. I mean, for fuck's sake. It wasn't the Russians that stopped Hillary Clinton from going to Wisconsin. It wasn't the Russians that got her to choose Tim Kaine. It wasn't the Russians that had them cheat Bernie Sanders. None of these things were the Russians. It wasn't the Russians that told her to take all those paid speeches from Wall Street, or all of that money from Saudi Arabia, or push oil and gas and fracking around the planet. None of those things were the Russians. And even when you're talking about stuff close to home, the Republican Party screwing around, suppressing the vote in various places, or in other places using Operation Crosscheck to get people's names off the list. The margin of error was less than, meaning the number of people that were shoved off the rolls were greater than the number of votes that Donald Trump lost by, or won by. I hope I may be saying it another way, but you get my point. I'm saying there were a host of issues that could be attributed to why Hillary Clinton lost that race. The Russians are far down on that list. With a straight face, Facebook and Twitter ads became this nefarious thing that overwhelmed a several billion, $1 billion campaign. I think it was like $1.4 billion campaign. Not to mention having all of the media on your side, having your own Twitter army that you've paid handsomely for, putting out your own Facebook. I mean, all of this stuff, voluminous amounts of influence that a person like Hillary Clinton would have in the media space, in the political space, and she was lost. And their first thought is to blame the Russians. Donald Trump wants to blame immigrants for the woes of America, and the Democratic Party, come on. There we are. Okay, we're back. What I was saying, it warmed my heart when Rachel Maddow's own network came out with this.
Intelligence Committee, their investigation into Russian election interference and what they have and have not uncovered. NBC's Ken Delanian has just jumped in front of a camera to join me with his new reporting. So, Ken, what are you hearing? What are you learning?
Hallie, after 2 years and interviewing more than 200 witnesses, the Senate Intelligence Committee has not uncovered any direct evidence of a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Oh, the indignity! The indignity! Your own network comes out. You spent 2 years of your life, 2 years of your life, breathlessly screaming about the Russian, the Red Menace, the Ruskies coming over with boots and their knives and all of this other stuff, swimming across the Atlantic, Vladimir Putin on a bear, dry humping Lady America. You've done this for 2 years. And your own network graces you with the indignity of saying that after all of this research for 2 years, where they were looking for a bipartisan committee, comes back. We found no direct evidence of collusion between Trump and the Russian campaign. Look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump is chest thumping on this. Thank you, MSNBC. Thank you, Democratic talking point establishment. Thank you. I appreciate that. So what does Richard Maddow think of this? Richard Maddow tweets out this. Senate Intelligence Committee Democrats disputes claim that Russian probe found no collusion. Okay, so she's trying to, beef up her merits on this. Like, no, wait. I understand that my network said that no collusion was found up to this point. But Democrats dispute this. All right, so let's take a look at this article. When you go to this article and you read into the article, it's like, all right, Rachel Maddow's pushing back on this, she's pushing back. And then you get to this part. NBC reported Tuesday that the committee is approaching the end of its investigation without finding direct evidence of a conspiracy between Trump campaign and Russia. A Democratic aide on Tuesday contested the emphasis the story placed on that finding. The word direct is doing a lot of work in the headline, she said, noting that the two sides of the committee agree on the facts but differ on their significance. The word direct is using a lot of... Certainly, there's plenty of circumstantial indirect evidence of collusion, the aide said. Even the paper that you send, meaning the report that you send, is kind of making the point that their issue is with the word direct, but they agree on the facts, just not on the significance. All right, let's just be clear that they don't necessarily dispute the facts of the story. Meaning when MSNBC is coming out saying there's no direct evidence of collusion, there's no direct evidence of collusion. You can quibble about what the term direct means, but at the end of the day, you have spent 2 years of your life saying that there was collusion between Trump and Russia. And after 2 years of investigation, a bipartisan committee comes back and says, at this point, we haven't found what you guys said existed. 2 years. You wasted 2 years of people's life on this. 2 years of people's life. And look, you can look at this in another way, in a more cynical way. This sucked up all the air out of the room for 2 years. For Democratic priorities, meaning for the left standpoint, that's one thing. But also from Trump being able to do, for the most part, whatever Trump wanted to do. It clogged up the wheels. The thing of the matter is, I'm not sure I wanted to clog up the wheels on that very specific issue of Trump or Russia. From a political standpoint, I guess it kind of makes sense to create a so bleed if you don't care about anything else in the larger world, meaning a larger window of opportunity for conflict between the United States and another nuclear powered nation. But just raw politics, maybe there's value in it. But from a reality standpoint, this has been shown to be fraught with problems. And after spending 2 years on this, there should be some level of explanation on how you spent 2 years on this and how you got this so magnificently wrong. This article does not back up or repudiate what was said prior, meaning the reporting that MSNBC did. This article that Rachel Maddow tweeted out in no way repudiates that claim. Here's, meaning for all the bluster of, wait a minute, that's not true. When you get into the nub of it, it's like, okay, we just don't like the term direct evidence. Direct evidence is doing too much work. Okay, just as long as we're clear that you don't have the link that you've been screaming about. Let's see. Right here. And they dispute the embassy report saying Democrats agreed on Burr, but they have yet to see any clear evidence of conspiracy between Donald Trump and Moscow. That's not true, Agnes King, a Maine independent who caucuses with Democrats, so Mother Jones. I think it's misleading. The Intelligence Committee report hasn't discussed the matter, let alone release the committee. They all disagree, but when it gets down to it, they don't have it. They don't have what they're talking about. Meaning, they're saying, hey, this guy gets prosecuted, that other guy gets prosecuted. All of this started under the guise that Donald Trump somehow colluded with Russia in order to steal the election from Hillary Clinton. MSNBC, Rachel Maddow's own network, comes out and says, we have found none of that up to this point. Rachel Maddow tweets this article out as a repudiation of what was said prior, meaning of her own network. This article that she puts out even puts that Democrats agree with the facts. They just disagree with their significance. Or for that matter, this word direct versus indirect, meaning quibbling with this term. Either way, they agree with the facts and they found no direct links to collusion. And this article does not in any way assert those links. I guess I'm making the point that for 2 years, we've been mired in this. For 2 years, Rachel Maddow's show has laid into this particular topic. And now we're stuck with what we suspected all along, that they didn't have the bang for the buck, and this was just a political hit job. When Donald Trump says witch hunt, you can't be that far from the truth. Just saying. I thought this was entirely funny. At least I thought it was funny. I mean, when I saw Ted Cruz sitting under the Trump sign after Trump, derided and joked him, God, that had to hurt and that had to burn in the soul of Ted Cruz to have to do something like that. I find this to be somewhat similar. That go on for 2 years of your life screaming about something that is a conspiracy theory, and then for your own network to come back and for the most part say, yeah, we haven't found what you were talking about. I think it's hilarious. Rachel just treated an apology an attraction. No, she didn't. I don't believe that at all. Anthony Reyes, this is so rich, laughing my ass off. It is rich, Anthony Reyes, and I thought it was funny. That's why I'm putting it on. All right, I'm going to end this because I got to go. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. I love this picture of Rachel Maddow. I'm not joking her with the picture. I love this picture. That's why I'm showing this picture. I am joking her about the 2 years screaming about Russia and having her own network come back and say, after all of this investigation, we have not found the direct evidence of collusion between the two parties. I'll take it. Thanks all. Y'all have a good one. And I may see you back this evening. We'll see. Have a good one all.